WorkView is the OnBase rapid application development tool. So looking at the screen here, if you've been using traditional OnBase document management or even some workflow, you'll see this looks a lot different from what you might be using today. We have all the data, and this particular use case is around contract management. And contract management is a very, very easy thing to wrap your head around why WorkView is a great solution for. And that's really, I have no idea how many times that vendor is going to redline that contract. It is not a very easily predictable process, right? And there could be multiple people involved in this process where, legal needs to get involved and the contract administrators are involved, and everyone really gets that 360 view of the process at one time. So looking at the data here over on the left-hand side, and this data can really exist anywhere. You can use OnBase, and we'll talk a little bit later on about classes, but you can store the data inside of OnBase. We can be the database table. More often than not, what we find is we're reaching out. We might be pulling this data from your ERP, from your HRIS system. If you're in higher ed, maybe your student information system. But basically, this data can exist inside of OnBase, or we can pull it from third-party systems. This is really the meat and the potatoes of most of our WorkView applications. And those tasks you see at the top, we have the ability to keep track of tasks, notes, documents, and emails. The tasks can be generated either as an ad hoc basis, so that human being is looking at this particular contract request, this issue, this incident, this particular case, and they're the person to decide, okay, I know who I should assign this to, and they might be manually creating a task there. And you'll see there's that plus button right on the right-hand side of that task ribbon where you can add more tasks. We can also predefine a task list. So, employee onboarding, that's a really good example. Hey, I know that we're going to hire Jim over in IT. He's going to need a desk from facilities, a chair, a file cabinet. He's going to need an Active Directory account from IT along with a laptop, and then mobile needs to assign him with a device. Well, WorkView is a great solution for that because we can assign this task to all of those departments at the same time, and those departments can come in and actually work their task and mark it completed. And we can even move this to the next stage in the process once all three of those departments have marked their task complete. So just an example, if you're using workflow today in that linear fashion, there's arguably got to be some of the processes that you have internally that we can streamline with that task generation. Document management, right? So we bring along the 25, almost 30 years of document management experience that we have. Documents can be part of this. Documents can maybe create this case, something like a form that you would fill out on the front end. And we can even map folders over to these cases as well. And then the business process, where it's been, where it needs to go, and when those decisions were made. So you'll see here with some basic JavaScript and CSS that's laid on this, we're able to configure these icons and really make this a very easy application to know what's happening. We're even taking this one step further. We see customers not using this large ribbon, but rather maybe just one icon on the top left-hand side of the case that will change, as it moves through the process. So when you open it up, you instantly see where it's at in the stage. So, when you would use this, I think we can all say complexity-wise, if you had a form that you need to store, big deal, right? Simple, document management. We've been doing that 25 years. What's the metadata on that form, and how long do we maybe need to keep it for? Then we take it one step further. Hey, I have a form that I not only need to store, but I need to route through a workflow process. No problem. We can very easily do that. And again, the complexity, we might call that a 5. This is where it really shines, and again, regardless of your space, if you're in government, the word constituent is applicable. If you're in higher ed, you can change constituent to student. If you're in the commercial space, let's call it a customer, or maybe it's a vendor. Someone calls, you need to create this issue, log the call, find the related record, send communications of acknowledgement, then start working the issue through some type of standard process with the ability to add, ad hoc tasks and notes. Oh, by the way, we need to report on all of this. So that's arguably one of the biggest advantages to the WorkView solution is we can catch all of this. We are the net that can manage all of these what-ifs, right? And then we don't think about reporting as this afterthought. Reporting is natively part of any application that we build, not only with our native reports inside of WorkView, but then you can lay something like reporting dashboards on top of an application. So the question I always ask the customers, how would you go about solving that business need? Would you buy a point application? Would you, build an app with custom code from the ground up? The reality is, if you were to buy a point app for every single use case that you have, your organization would have 2,000 applications today. And maybe you do. Maybe one of the initiatives that you have for 2020 or maybe this year was to consolidate and really get rid of all those little one-off applications. OnBase can be a great tool to do that. So again, I think I touched on this already, but most organizations, again, they have those core line of business systems. We really complement those either by pulling data and making them part of an application. We can lay an application on top of one of those core systems that does not have that functionality today. Just know, regardless, think about your core systems and maybe the gaps that might be in there today. So 3 ways that we get more done, right? More bodies, which is essentially more money. Work harder and longer. Nobody wants to do that. Work smarter. And the reality is, there's a third option between building something or buying something off the shelf. And that's, using something you already own. It's that foundational platform. We can build many connected applications across the board. And just note, even at Highland Software, right? We're a software company. We have so many gaps, I think, in what we do, and we're a very unique industry. We have 70+ applications built on WorkView today. One of them, many of you have already interacted with, and that's called our software change request application. So, I think Highland is arguably one of the best at being able to listen to our customers and make those changes in the software. I've never had Microsoft ask me, hey, we want your feedback. We want to make, this product better. We do, and through that process, it's called a software change request, SCR. Our scissor app, as we call it, SCR, that's where we track all of those. So anytime Highland is developing towards a new release, we look at what do customers want to change, how many customers are added to each of those, what's the impact that we're going to see across industry with this change. They're all weighed, and essentially we build in what we can for that development cycle. So WorkView, WorkView, if you were to look up the Webster definition, it would be a relational database building tool in OnBase with an interface builder to display the content. Yippee, how exciting, right? It's actually very boring when you look at it in that way. The real power comes from being able to tie it to everything else. So the question here, if you're not, maybe you are a relational database expert. Most people that we talk with do not like managing custom code. Most people that we talk with do not like inheriting this old access database application where, frankly, it's easier just to build a new one than to go in and make changes to one that already exists. So I wanted to put this out there, just relational databases 101. So maybe you are a database person, just blank this out for the next 60 seconds. If you are not a database expert, this should be as simple as it can get. And again, one of my hobbies is fishing. This is a very, very easy analogy here, right? So you have a fisherman, an angler. Here's the data around who that fisherman is. You have a fish, in this case, a shark. The shark name, the species, the genus. There is nothing that relates these two things in any way, shape, or form. An angler has absolutely nothing to do with a shark. Shark has nothing to do with an angler. What relates these two database tables is that event of a catch. What's the catch date? What's the location? What's the bait that was used? The surf conditions, etc. I throw this example out here because this is one I did build. One of my hobbies is shark fishing. We have a shark catch tracking application that I built in OnBase just for demo purposes and to show how flexible it is. And again, something I'm passionate about. But this should help you understand. So relational databases, now that catch record, the catch record database is our relational database that's pulling and relating all of this data together in that one interface. So again, when you look at WorkView by itself, WorkView is essentially the right-hand side of the screen here. the contextual data, what's the location, maybe who is this case, who's involved in the process, and then the lower right-hand side, the business activities, those tasks, the notes, notifications that we can send out automatically, and then even a calendar type view that we can build within an application. Over on the left-hand side is really what we've been doing for 25 years, right? Workflow and document management, the roles, rules, processes, and related content. The power comes from being able to put all of this together in a single solution. And here's an example. In this case, WorkView ties and integrates with all these other Highland products. And again, I'm sure many of you are using these today, things like a Unity form and workflow. We can take a Unity form and drive it right into a WorkView application. With our new Unity lifecycles that came out a few years ago, you can actually take that WorkView object and think of that as your document, and we can route that through a workflow. So that screen I showed earlier with contract management, we can route that now through a workflow process just like you do with documents today. I show this because most of our customers, and maybe not share-based, but 99% of our customers have App Enabler, Unity Forms, and Workflow today as part of their solution. So think about where you might own some of this technology today or where you're using this type of technology for a solution. The shared spreadsheets, the email inbox or a network share drive just for documents. Those old legacy applications that are difficult to maintain, they're antiquated. Or checklists that are on paper, or even a digital checklist. Maybe you're using Microsoft Excel as the checklist there. So again, just like the rest of OnBase, our philosophy from the ground up is to build these solutions with configurations and no coding involved. And again, just a quick story. As we mentioned, I'm a good storyteller here. This particular app, I'll jump ahead and go backwards. This particular application was one that I built during a webinar. I actually did it on the fly during a webinar for our higher education team, and it's essentially a student advising application. It allows me to basically track who the student is, what's the visit, how this all relates. I just wanted to jump to this and show this is what is the core of WorkView applications. This is how they're built from the ground up. So at the top layer, we start with our application. And this can be contract management. This can be complaint management. This can be a billing type application. This can be virtually anything that you need or you might be using some of that other technology for. The next level is our classes. Those are the tables of data within that application. In the example I showed with the shark, right, we have an angler, we have the shark, and then we have the catch record. All three of those are classes within my application. Within those classes are attributes. And attributes you can think of as really the keywords of your application. We can map keywords to attributes. We can map attributes to keywords. So that's how you would take something like a Unity form or even a document and create a case, using those types of mappings. And then the lowest layer there, the filters that you're going to set up. A filter is really the predefined data constraint. Show me all cases that are assigned to me. Show me all requests due within the next 30 days. Show me all contracts expiring in 30, 60, 90 days. Those are just some examples of filters and how we can filter data. Not only can filters be really powerful, but then you can embed filters into specific views. So an example I'll use, I'm just going back to contracts. Okay, show me this vendor issue. You open up this vendor, and then you can maybe see a filter, an embedded filter within that view of, here's all the contracts we have with this vendor, and here's any issue that we've ever had in the past with that vendor. And again, views and mappings, I think I touched on mappings already. Really, that allows us to map documents, folders, forms, keywords, all over into a WorkView app. And then the views. Your views really can be built out. You can build views specific to the process, specific to the users. You can really control who can see what, just like standard OnBase technology. So again, just not to beat a dead horse here, in this case, this is the employee class and the attributes that would fall within that. So a little bit more business-centric example. And in this case, that student advising application, there's really 3 steps to building the app. you first lay out your classes, the attributes that you'd like, define the relationships between those tables. You populate that data. So, you're either going to use a form to fill that out. If you're using, an old access database today, or virtually any system today that can produce a flat file as an output, we can pull that data in, and maybe that's going to be our starting point for your application. And then the last step is building the user interface. With OnBase 18, we had some great enhancements to our user design and the user interface designer. It now includes this drag and drop functionality. So if anyone is familiar with Unity forms or ever built a Unity form, you'll see this looks a lot like that technology where you can drag and drop, the attributes that you see on the left-hand side into your application. So, and again, this is just one of the many enhancements that we put to WorkView from 17 to 18. And I just want to throw this out there as well. We often talk about things like case management. That's often the term used for our WorkView tool. It's even in the title of the module, right? WorkView Case Manager. The reality is when I talk with customers and I say the words case management, oftentimes it sends a shiver down a customer's spine and they, turn the other way and they want nothing to do with that. Really, a case is nothing more than a request, a visit, a complaint. It's virtually anything. And again, that can be kicked off by a document type coming into the system, by someone filling out a form. My point here is you don't have to reconceptualize the solutions every time. Many of these solutions will have the same themes, notes, tasks, activities, a workflow that ties on the back end, notifications that go out. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing organizations really adopt it from an enterprise level. And what I mean by that is customers are starting to build applications that do nothing at the high level. And what I mean is a good example, let's just go to higher ed. Higher education has a student information system. All right, so let's create a WorkView app that manages all of our student data. And then when they go and build new applications, all they're doing is pointing to those tables that already exist inside of OnBase. So they're building this connective app with centralizing all student data, all educator data, all personnel data, and then they're able to build applications, student incident management, honorary degree program. They already have all the data in there to manipulate and build it out. So just some different ways to think about building. And again, you don't have to just take my word for it. The analysts over the past, 10 years, Highland's been a leader in the Gartner quadrants. And, a few years ago, they said ECM was dead and we moved towards this content services idea. We were just named a leader again for this year. So that's exciting for us to mention. Julia over at Notre Dame, they were able to build 30 plus solutions in a 3-year period, where if you were to go back at the same 3 years before that, when they were using standard workflow and forms, they were really limited to about 6 or 7 live solutions. So it's really helped them in going forward with this rapid application development theme. And I think this is why, right? So when we look at custom application development, we go through this discovery process, this custom development, this very long cycle that ultimately we deliver what might not even be a valid product at the end of that cycle. So the example there is government, right? Government is so tied to regulations and legislative changes. If a law were to change during this process, we might have to go back and reconfigure the entire application. With OnBase, we have the ability to really deliver what I call like an MVP or a framework of a solution, that minimum viable product where, hey, if nothing else, if someone's using an access database, a shared spreadsheet, or an old antiquated app, if nothing else, we can give them a space to keep track of all the tasks, all the documents. It's got a history trail tied to it, notifications, status changes, and then all the great workflow side on the back end of it. It's tough to argue that you can build a solution very, very quickly that's meaningful using those tools. Right over at the Judge Group, when I showed that slide that talks about all the integration points and how we can integrate with Outlook or ShareBase or a mobile device, all the bells and whistles that you can add to your solution, that's another big advantage here. And again, with little to no integration, all the technologies all in the same ecosystem, everything talks together. So the example here is, if you were to go live with that custom application, then, okay, now we're going to extend this app out to our field workers. So we're going to have to build a mobile app that's going to integrate with our custom application that we've already built. Okay, let's take it apart, refactor it, and rewrite it. With our platform, you can really do something like that very easily. Hey, let's add mobile as a component to this. Let's add reporting. Let's add this public-facing share side or like public access where individuals can come and maybe retrieve cases and things like that. All doable within the OnBase platform. And Sean over at Universal Forest Products, this is a great use case. Vendor management, right? So in the past, anytime they would have a vendor issue, they would take a photo of the damaged shipment, they would add it to an Excel folder or an Excel file as a line item, and someone would then have to do some work to that. Someone would have to go out and retrieve the purchase order and tie it to that. They would retrieve the invoice. So, hey, let's dispute this invoice because this was a damaged shipment. A lot of moving parts there. Now they take a mobile device, fill out a basic form, take a photo of the damaged shipment, click submit. It creates the vendor issue that ties to a vendor record, that ties to the contract, that ties to the purchase order, the invoice. Everything is now in that one-stop shop that allows them to see all those moving parts. So some other use cases. I know I've mentioned a few of these already. IT trouble ticket, project request, project management, vendor onboarding, standard employee onboarding, just use cases across the board that we see. But then we have some use cases, in each industry as well. So I'm not going to go through each of these and read every one of them. Just note, at every single slide here, you'll see a solution that someone had to build. And my point there is there wasn't an off-the-shelf piece of software available for them. So that customer had to build it, and they chose to build it in OnBase because of all the reasons I've been mentioning. So the example I'll provide here is, lead sampling. Everyone probably remembers the Flint, Michigan water crisis a few years ago. Well, now the city provides at least 500 city to residential connection updates every year, getting rid of all those old lead pipes. Well, first they started with sampling. Hey, before we can even replace anything, we have to know which samples are bad, which one of these connections are testing high for lead. Well, then they realized very quickly after they deployed that solution, okay, now all these ones are testing high. What do we do about them? And that's when they, when I talk about, the adaptability of the solution and flexibility, they were able to then add a service request order process right on top of that sampling. So, and that one's right in the middle of the screen here. Physical records management, right? So government, they fall victim to having to keep a lot of records permanently. Grant management, that's another one that's been a hot topic this year. Higher education, the one I really like here would be like student accessibility. How are you managing any student with an accessibility requirement? We can create a profile for each student and show, how we've provided that student accommodations, every year that they've been at our university. Public record request management, honorary degree management. Those are a few that have been just popping up this year. Financial services and insurance. We've got an application specific for tracking a loan from submission to fulfillment to ensure, and timers run on your documents to ensure that all your documents are up to date based on your loan, right? So if I submit for this commercial loan, it might take 100 days to close. And by the time that it closes, my most recent pay stub or, my business's most recent stub, documents may not be up to date, within that loan close. Commercial examples, we see all sorts of applications here, and you'll see, application for automobile test drive, aircraft data and document management, just a few others where there was no off-the-shelf piece of software for that. Environmental case tracking and, environmental case management and issue tracking. Those are customers that, are producing goods, and they fall suit to EPA regulations and things like that. So they not only want to be able to track their own, scores, testing, and things like that, but then, how can we improve upon that, or how can we make or resolve those issues when they do arise? Healthcare, appeals and grievances, that's a really good example where it's, again, a very, very unpredictable process. It's very tough to build a standard workflow process around the appeals and grievances within healthcare. The flexibility of WorkView allows us to do that by assigning tasks and due dates and notifications all on the back end there. So we've really put some enhancements into OnBase over the past few years to make it so you don't have to start from scratch. We have a few point applications that are available. We have a few frameworks available, and most excitingly, the ACE file tool that just came out this past year with OnBase 18. So a point application, it's ready to deploy business application. It's built on the Highland technology suite, so essentially workflow, WorkView. Some of these include some reporting capabilities. Contract management. This is an example. We have contract management where we've really put it in a box, and with a package service engagement with Highland, we can deploy it in your environment, and you can be delivered something that looks a lot like what you're seeing here. So we have contract lifecycle management and public record request management if you're in the public sector and fall suit to things like FOIA requests. And again, just to touch on, we talk about the whole package here. Public records is a great example. There's all sorts of little niche apps that pop up for this, right? So GovQA, Next Request, Just FOIA. Those are all, great solutions if all you ever needed to do was get a public record request and submit an answer to that person, in a very easy way. The reality is many of those solutions fall short in triaging those requests because they don't have that massive workflow engine on the back end. What really matters with public records is filling out the easy ones quickly and triaging those ones that are going to take a lot of time. Public records, that's another example where it's not just the records on the request. There is records management on the back end. If you don't have records management, applied to those documents, you're leaving yourself open to fulfill all those requests. And lastly, public access, another example where why not just make all those documents with no personally identifiable information on them available for the public so they don't even have to request them in the first place. That's where, our solution really hits it out of the park because we can manage all of that within one umbrella. And these come with an admin panel, so this is where you're giving some power back to the business users where, in this case, this is contract management that we're looking at, but this agreement type is going to have this process flow and these stages that reflect, the status changes as it moves from step 1 to step 2. This allows those users to configure that or even build out, new process or new contract requests and how they're going to flow through the system. Frameworks are essentially starting points. We have a few of these that are put together today: HR performance management, employee relations, and again, this is more or less incident management, but being able to manage issues that happen in the workplace. So whether it's a safety issue, an OSHA violation, a sexual harassment issue, we can track all of those within the same system here. And lastly, boards and committees. If your organization has a board of trustees that meets on a monthly basis, we can keep track of who the members are of that board, how often that board meets, where they meet, and even keep track of meetings on the back end. Just note, this is not agenda management. Agenda management is much more robust from an end-to-end perspective of controlling the meetings and things. But this is more or less that data management. Who are the meeting members and some of the moving parts. And again, you can see there's a button down on the bottom to add a new position to this board. But again, this is one that we can essentially hand over. And the most exciting part for me, hands down, is the ACE file tool. So ACE actually stands for Application Creation Accelerator, pun intended there with Excel. We're starting with Excel to build our applications now. This was actually built by our intern, Tyler. Needless to say, he's now a permanent employee at Highland Software. And this is it. This is how we built the student advising app that I just showed you guys the screenshot of earlier. So we start by laying out our classes. What are our tables of data? And you can imagine this is very easy to do if we already have an existing app. If you have an access table or an access database out there today, you can look at something like that and very easily lay out what your database tables should be. What are the attributes, right? What are the pieces of data? And you can see there, we're specifying the data type, So it can be integer, it can be alphanumeric, we can do Boolean, relationship, formatted text, dates, many different data types that we can provide there. And arguably the biggest time savings here is now you're able to specify the data sets, the filters. You can create a view for each of these as you go into the system. And again, I'm assuming most people on the call have never built a WorkView app, but if you have, you'll understand how time consuming things like creating views were in the past. You would have to create a view for every class that you put into the system. Well, this does it automatically for you. So I use this little magic button, Application Creation Accelerator, right at the top of OnBase Studio. We pull it into the system, and you'll see there's even two little checkboxes at the bottom. If you did not specify filters or views right on that Excel document, if all you did was specify the first two columns or three columns of the display name, the data type, and the related class, we can then go and import and automatically create those filters and views for each of these classes upon import. So this is an example of the application that it stood up for me right from Excel. And again, not the most beautiful application in terms of colors and the user interface, but you'll see if this is my starting point, this is light years ahead of using something like an Excel document or an Access database. Now you might come in here and add some colors and maybe change the views and make it a little more user-friendly. But right from Excel to this is leaps and bounds better than anything that we've had in the past and anything that I've seen from our competitors in terms of a rapid application development tool. And with one change to this app, all I did was change my details. You'll see that visit details has an empty column next to it. With one change of deleting that column and making visit details 100% of the width, this is now the application that I built, and this is from the web client, that usable app right from an Excel document. So, just to leave you guys with some resources, the application builder community. If you're not on the Highland community, I really encourage you to sign up. We're constantly posting new information, new ACE files, answering questions from customers and partners just like yourselves. That's the best part to me is seeing the collaboration that happens between customers, even across industry of, hey, we're thinking about building this vendor management solution, right? Every single organization across the planet has vendors they work with. So it's interesting seeing, people across industry help each other out. So I really encourage you guys to sign up there. This is where you would find, some basic ACE files that you can get started with today. And I also wanted to introduce the idea of a WorkView workshop. So OnBase 18, like I mentioned, it brought some really great enhancements that allow us to really, dig in and provide a lot of value, even in a one-day workshop where we can maybe get the ball rolling for you on your own applications. Some feedback we've heard from customers is, we're WorkView certified, but when we got back to the office, we really didn't know where to start. That's what these workshops are all about. We're helping to guide and maybe get your first application up and running. And these are completely free to you guys as customers. So, if you do want to take advantage of something like that, reach out to your KeyMark account manager, and we'll be happy to work with them in scheduling your own workshop. And with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that anyone has. And I did not see that. Diane, do you see any questions that have been submitted yet?
No, and just a reminder, if anybody came in late, there's a little Q&A box to the right of your screen. If you guys have questions, you can type it in there, and I can.
Yeah, and if you don't want to type them in there, you can always email me as well. My email's right there on the screen. So, feel free to shoot an email to james.morrison or abc@highland.com. So we got that email that stands for Application Builder Community at highland.com. You can fire us an email. My entire team will get that. Product management will be on that string. So if you have questions, ideas, don't hesitate to reach out. Our whole team is here to help.
questions. So I guess, again, if you guys have any questions, just reach out to Jim. Come on down there. You can also reach out to your account manager too, and you will also be getting in this presentation and a share-based link, and also the recorded audio version, and you'll see that you just saw. Anything else, Jim?
Awesome. That is it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your attention. And again, reach out if you have any questions at all.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for everyone for joining us today.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.